I'm here with the just announced Fujifilm X-T5, and let's take a look back. The Fujifilm X-T3, that camera was like a turning point for the manufacturer, where that robust feature set in combination with this retro-inspired body, something that can do well in photography as well as video, it made for this really special camera, especially at its price, that surprised people, that went on to sell a ton of units and really build and add to the reputation of Fujifilm in the digital imaging space. Now, there is an argument to be made that the X-T4 didn't provide a substantial upgrade to that, and in some ways took away from what made that camera special. But I'll tell you right now, I spent 2 weeks with this X-T5, and I think that this camera is a return to form. The Fujifilm X-T5 is a camera that's designed to be picked up and taken everywhere with you. So for those of you that don't know, I mean, most of you watching probably do know, but the X-T series in Fujifilm's lineup, it's all about this retro-inspired look. So you have these dials and knobs that harken back to older cameras, cameras of the past. And I think this is a setup that is more conducive for learning photography and just absorbing photography a little bit better. You essentially have this physical exposure triangle right in front of you where you can control shutter speed, your ISO setting, as well as your aperture. And as you use it, wherever you are in your photography journey, I think you just internalize photography a little bit better, at least when it comes to photography. Under the main dials, you have these two sub dials. The one on the left is a drive mode that allows you to change whether you're shooting in single shot or continuous high or bracketing or what have you. And on the other dial, you have a sub dial for still and movie mode. I think that Fujifilm could have just combined these two, where you had one drive dial and there was just a movie mode on that. I think it would have made the setup even simpler. And I think it would have made it better because then you could have even had this second dial here dedicated for the photometry of the camera, where you choose how do you want to expose for a scene, whether it's center weighted or you're exposing for the entire scene. I think that would have been an interesting move, but this is the setup that you're left with. The viewfinder here is a 3.69 million dot OLED display with up to 100 frames per second refresh rate. When you're coming from a camera like the XH2, that's a noticeable step down, where that thing has over 5 million dots. So it's something that could feel good for most people, but depending on what camera you have or have experience around, it can feel a little bit underwhelming, but it depends on what you shoot and as well how you shoot. Some of you might not even use the viewfinder. You'll stick to the LCD display on the back, and that's okay. It's just something that you notice a difference in if you have proximity to a higher end camera. Moving to the back of the camera, you have a row of buttons on the top, the trash can, playback, AF lock, as well as the quick menu button. Here's something interesting. The back radial dial that you use to control some settings, that's also a customizable button. There's also a dial on the front, but at this time, you can't actually assign a function to it, even though it presses in. And that just seems a little strange to me. I wonder if Fujifilm is going to update that in the future, but for right now, in the settings, you can only customize the back rear dial. Looking at the back of the camera, you also have another suite of buttons below for the auto exposure lock. There's now a joystick. Well, I shouldn't say now. On this series, there's always been a joystick, but with the X8 series, they have a disc-based sort of navigational stick. I don't like that as much. I actually much prefer this one right here. You also get the 4 directional pads, a menu button, and a display button here. And most importantly, the biggest upgrade, if you're asking me, is the return of the 3-way tilting display for this camera. YouTubers be damned. As much as they want you to believe that everyone wants a flippy screen on every single camera, I think there is a time and a place for these kinds of things. And I think for a camera like this, that is largely going to be used by operators. People are going to be behind the camera capturing the moment. A display like this is much better. Low angle, high angle photography is just much easier, and you don't have to look down and to the left to try and recompose your shot. So kudos to Fujifilm for, drawing a line in the sand and saying, you know what, there's going to be some cameras that have a flippy screen and there's some that are not. And the ones that we think are more photography centric, they're going to have a traditional 3-way tilting display. Something that I think is the right choice. The Fujifilm X-T5 has 2 slots for SD cards, UHS-2 SD cards. It also uses the NPW 235 battery that was introduced with the Fujifilm X-T4. Looking at connectivity, you got Wi-Fi, Bluetooth as expected. You also have a mic port as well as a remote port, the flash sync, USB-C, and micro HDMI. Yes, I would have loved to see a full-size HDMI, but again, a camera of this size and nature, you can get away with micro HDMI, and most people are not going to be upset about it. Oh, and what I should mention is that you still get the SCM focus switch on the front of the camera. This is something that was removed from some of the other Fujifilm cameras. You get that here, and I think that is great for consumers, where you can quickly control focusing with a flip of a switch. So this is a little unfair. We know that going in, but I am curious.
Yes.
You know, since I have this camera, since I have you here, since I'm here physically, I have to ask, tell me, what are your thoughts on this thing? You have not shot it. I literally just put it in your hand right now. What are your thoughts of the new Fujifilm X-T5? And you can ask me any questions.
Oh, is that what this is?
This is, see that sticker there? That sticker is hiding.
Ah, this is the Fuji X-T5. Got it.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on top of this. From the days of the X-T2 and the X-T3, like, it feels like they're adding so much onto the camera body. Like, look how many buttons there are. And then on top of the dials, there's more dials. Like, I get it, and maybe if you know the camera, that's simpler to use, but like, I miss just a super clean body. It's got some good weight to it, but like also these lenses, this is so big.
To be fair, it's their new macro lens. It's a 30mm macro,
Okay.
which works out to, well, I'll leave it in the little animation here below.
Okay.
But the idea is that you can be in the field and get super close.
Wow, I just touched.
I mean, you can take that hood up.
The fucking.
You can take the hood up and get even closer.
Really?
Yes.
All right, let's see.
Can your M lens
Wait, we're on an ultra burst. No, my M lens can't do that. That's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie.
Now let me tell you.
That's wild.
Look at that. Look at that. Okay.
Also, oh, that's nice.
They went back to.
That's nice.
Give them the roses. Give them the roses. What's nice? Say it out loud. What's nice?
Say it to them. It's very nice that they stopped doing this stupid YouTuber flip out screen that everybody does, because when you're a photographer that's outside shooting and your center is all the way over here, it f***s up composition on a lot of your photos. So this is actually nice that the screen is just back to where it should be.
All right, so that's enough about the body, the experience of it all. There are other things I could talk about, but let's move on to the photography. The Fujifilm X-T5 uses a brand new 40.2 megapixel sensor, the one that was introduced with the X-H2, and it makes for incredible photography. This is something that gives you a noticeable upgrade over previous Fujifilm cameras. When you start to play with these files and look at what they can do, it's something that just makes you appreciate how versatile this thing can be. Looking at these files, looking at the dynamic range and the noise response, you do see a noticeable upgrade in most situations over cameras like the X-T4 and X-T3. When it comes to noise response, even though we can't play with these raw files, I've been playing a lot with the X-H2, it's great to see that the noise response is pretty much similar to that of the X-T4. So you can get these richer, bigger files and not get an increase in grain and noise when it comes to your raw file. So that's great to have. It's a really compelling reason to consider upgrading to this camera if you have a camera like the X-T3. Now I'll get to play with these raw files in the future, and maybe we'll make a full deep dive review of this thing. We'll see. But having resolution is important, right? When you have something with 40 megapixels or more, it just means that if you have to skew an image or crop an image, that you just have a bit more latitude to do that, right? Where you're not losing so much information as you're adjusting and tweaking your files. So I don't think it's something that should be knocked at. There is value to what this sensor and the resolution it brings to the table. The autofocus system has also been upgraded, as with previous Fujifilm cameras that got the new 5th generation processor. So users can expect eye, face, and subject detection to be really, really good on a camera like this. It still surprises me that many personalities on YouTube will not take the 2 minutes to tweak and adjust the autofocus for the type of work that they're doing, as you would with any modern camera, as any consumer would when they get their camera. But here we are. If you take this camera and you take the 2 minutes just to pick the right environment setting for whatever you're capturing, you can expect phenomenal results. When you're looking at cameras, the entire market, yeah, Sony still leads the pack, and especially with what they're doing with AI and the Sony a7R5 that we got to play with recently, they are still in the lead. But the gap between them and a camera like this, I think, is much, much, much more narrow. And I think for Fujifilm users, that's a great thing. Being able to get down as low as ISO 125 is great, especially for client work when you really want to maximize dynamic range. You can shoot as fast as 15 frames per second with the mechanical shutter or 20 frames per second with the electronic shutter, which is, again, really fast for a camera of this size and nature. And the upgraded image stabilization in this camera gives you up to 7 stops of stabilization with most of Fujifilm's modern lenses, something that many users will come to appreciate as well. You take this camera, its sensor, the 19 film simulations, and the wildly customizable profiles that you can build, and you have incredibly formidable photography tool in a package that's well under 600 grams with the battery. That's nuts. And that's why I think, even in the 2 weeks that I've been using this thing, that this camera really feels like a return to form for Fujifilm. And this is not even talking about the video features. The Fujifilm X-T5 can record up to 6.2K video in a 30p widescreen format. If you go down to 4K, you can expect 60p. And if you go down to 30p or 24p, you actually get oversampled 4K recording. And these will cover most of the recording needs of most people, right? This is not meant to be a video first solution, but those are really impressive video features for a camera of this kind. On top of that, you have the ability to record F-Log or F-Log2. F-Log2 giving you about 13 plus stops of dynamic range in your video, F-Log giving you about a stop less. And the ISO is about 1,000 and 500 respectively for those two log profiles. So if you are looking for the most dynamic range, you're probably gonna be recording with F-Log2, and you're probably gonna wanna have an ND filter and some noise reduction added after the fact to really give you the best result possible, all of which are not that hard. If you're someone that knows about log recording, well, then you'll know how to get around these type of things. But the beauty of a camera like this is that you can use a film simulation like Eterna or Provia and get great video in the moment, where you can just set your exposure, make sure it looks good, and get, a little over 12 stops of dynamic range, maybe around 12 stops of dynamic range in the moment, and just take that file, send it to where you need to, clip it as needed, and you're done. And that's really a powerful feature with the camera like this. One thing to note is that while you can do 10-bit 422 video, it does cap at 360 megabits per second, so about half the maximum bit rate of an XH2 or XH2S. And these are some concessions that are going to be made, along with frame rates in a camera this size and managing heat without a fan. It's just some things that you're gonna trade off. But again, a photography-centric tool that has very powerful video features that I think raise the ceiling much higher than most of its users are gonna require. What's also wild for a camera like this is that you can use the micro HDMI out and capture ProRes or Blackmagic RAW video. And it's something that's gonna spit out much higher file sizes, but the feature and ability are there. It's not capped in any way. You can go ahead and do that to an external recorder. I don't see this as something that I would personally take advantage of. I don't think many other people would, but if you had an XH series camera or even other kinds of cameras and you just want to add some additional footage, you can do raw recording with this camera and get something a lot more robust. There's also other notable upgrades to this X-T5 with respect to video, such as 5-axis digital image stabilization, subject detection in the movie modes, up to 2 times digital zoom, a focus meter assist, recording frame indicators, flickerless shutter speed, and more. All in all, the Fujifilm X-T5 is kind of a powerhouse when it comes to video. And again, this is something that was built with photography in mind first. It just so happens that if you get this camera, you can start to experiment with video and incorporate video into your workflow a lot easier. Fujifilm asserts that this is a photography-first camera, and they're largely right. This camera ushers in a ton of upgrades that it inherits from the XH2 and XH2S and makes for something that elevates a photography experience while maintaining true to its roots, something that, you know, Fujifilm has become known for. I think if you're a photography first creator, this is a camera that you'll appreciate. If you have a camera like the X-T2 or X-T3, I think this is finally a camera that you'll look at with a worthwhile reason to upgrade. Now, if you're also looking to do video and experiment with video, you'll just be getting this bonus where all these things that Fujifilm has been developing, both in the field and behind the scenes, they've now thrown into this camera that makes for a really great video experience. If you're a video first creator, I don't think this is the first thing you'd look at. There's a lot of great solutions on the market, both inside and outside of Fujifilm. But if you're someone that enjoys photography and wants to add video in an easy way to what you do, a camera like the X-T5 is hard to beat. Diving deep into this camera to, you know, play with the in-camera adjustments and building out your own custom recipes, that's the fun of this journey where, you know, over time, the more you use it, the more you abuse it, the more you take it with you everywhere, it starts to reward that. You start to learn more about the camera, but also yourself. And it's something that I think a lot of people will enjoy. And I think that's something that, you know, Fujifilm has done a great job about. They make these cameras that look cool, that make you want to pick it up, that make you want to use it. And they pair that with great features that reward you for shooting more and often. And then you add to the fact, you know, this attention to detail where you can do things like in-camera focus bracketing and raw conversion on the fly, where it just has this huge suite of features built into the camera. You know, that just elevates the entire thing. And yeah, you know, like we showcased earlier in a little snippet in New York, this can be an intimidating solution. It's not as simple as some other solutions on the market, but being able to at least have these things that you can grow into, I think it adds a lot of value. And I think that it's something that most consumers will appreciate over time. Now add to this a weather-resistant body and an incredibly well-tested shutter, you just have this great camera that's built to last. Let me rephrase that. A photography-centric camera that captures great images, can record phenomenal video in a very well-constructed portable body that's built to last. All coming in at well under $2,000 US. This is something that makes for a compelling solution. It's something that looks great, that shoots great, that makes you want to create more. And that itself is a feature. It doesn't feel cold and isolated. It doesn't feel like this industrial thing. And while some people are okay with that and may even prefer that, I just enjoy the fact that there's a company like Fujifilm still doing cameras like this. The Fujifilm X-T5 competes with the best of them without even breaking a sweat. And factor in that this camera sits well below $2,000 and you got something that makes a compelling reason to upgrade. All right, so there you have it. That is my deep dive of the Fujifilm X-T5. And my thanks to Jason for hosting me and taking me around New York as usual, and even adding his color commentary to this thing. I'm more curious to hear what you think about this camera. So let me know what you think in the comments down below, whether you're gonna upgrade or if there's something else you're waiting for, another camera altogether that you're looking at. I don't know if I'll make a review of this camera. I think that, you know, where this channel is going and the things we'd like to talk about, I don't know if I have time or the capacity to do a full-on deep dive of what this thing can do, but maybe you can convince me otherwise. We'll see. But for the time being, I will just say that this is something that I think people will get a lot of joy and delight from. It is a bit of a departure from the things that I've been enjoying, but I think that this is something that is Fujifilm's bread and butter. And the people that enjoy that, people that are finding value from that, they got something to look forward to with a camera like this. Anyway, I've exhausted my time here. As always, my name is Gadgen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.